New at 6 this week marks a somber anniversary. It's been 30 years since the violent killings of Robin Edwards and David Knobling.
Their deaths are part of 4 gruesome cases infamous in our area, the Colonial Parkway Murders. Tonight, Laura Geller sits down with Robin's family, and they have a message for investigators. Laura.
Well, guys, 30 years hasn't softened the blow of losing 14-year-old Robin Edwards in such a brutal and mysterious way. Virginia State Police tell me this is an ongoing investigation. While there's no physical evidence to link all the murders because they are similar, VSP is working together with the FBI. But tonight, Robin's family is pleading for action on the case and for answers. The saying goes, no parent should have to bury their child. It's just not supposed to happen that way. But for Robin Edwards' mom, Bonnie Dodson, the way it's not supposed to happen is a reality she lives with every day.
Maybe we'll never know who killed Robin.
Jeanette Santiago sits close to her mother, the two literally leaning on each other as they talk about the death of their beloved daughter and sister.
She missed out on her entire life.
Jeanette was just 19 when her younger sister was taken from them.
I think about sometimes what kind of mom she would have been, you know. I think about the fact that she doesn't get to have children.
Bonnie says even 30 years later, her last conversation with one of her children is fresh in her mind. It was on September 19th, 1987, after Robin had gone out with David Knobling, his brother and cousin.
I told her that she had to be home by 11, and she called me about 11:15 and let me know that she was home safe.
But home safe for Robin wouldn't last. She snuck out of the house the family now knows to meet David Knobling. At first, Bonnie thought maybe her daughter had run away, as she had done in the past. But a couple days later, David's truck was found abandoned. And 2 days after that, the bodies of David and Robin were found at Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge in Isle of Wight. Both had been shot to death.
You can't believe the sound that a human person can make when that kind of shock hits. It was just like somebody ripped my heart out.
As the anniversary of Robin's death draws near, they feel they are no closer to knowing what happened to her. The FBI tells us it is investigating alongside Virginia State Police. The agencies are sharing information on this case, the killing of a couple the year before, and 2 other double homicides committed in the next 2 years. They are collectively known as the Colonial Parkway Murders, and none of them are solved or closed.
If you dwell on it too much, it's a burning anger. But yet at the same time, you have no direction for the anger.
For direction, they look to investigators. They hope stories like this serve as a reminder to keep working the case, that the search for answers 30 years later is still important to Robin's surviving family.
We're still here. We still care about it. It's a cold case, but it's not cold in our heart.
They say time heals all wounds, but for the families of the 8 people killed in what's known as the Colonial Parkway Murders, 3 decades hasn't done that. This week marks the 30th anniversary of one of those cases, the violent killings of Robin Edwards and David Knobling. Tonight, Laura Geller sits down with Knobling's family.
David Knobling and Robin Edwards were last seen alive by their families a few days before their bodies were found. 30 years later, the case has not been solved. Now, David's brother is speaking out on his search for answers. For Mike Knobling, this garage is a second home of sorts. And it's not just because it's a glorified man cave, complete with a TV surround sound system.
And then there's Brandon hooks.
And any tool he could ever want. There is one tool out of his entire collection that has become a cherished possession.
Let's see, which one is it? The snap-on 3/4 inch. Little box end. This was David's wrench. It's the only one I have of his.
David is Mike's brother, a brother who was taken from his family in a brutal and mysterious killing in 1987. The eldest Knobling was a gearhead, and Mike followed his brother's footsteps to the garage.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time talking to David out here. This is where I think of him. This is where I feel him.
A 30-year absence has not diminished the bond of brothers.
I miss him. I miss him very much.
David missed out on most of Mike's life, and Mike still isn't sure exactly what happened.
It's hard. It's hard not having somebody to blame. You took my brother. You know, somebody to be mad at, angry at.
On September 19th, 1987, the brothers went out with their cousin and Robin Edwards. Mike and David went back to their mom's house, the younger brother remembering their last moments together clearly.
We sat out in the driveway smoking a cigarette, and then he left, and I actually got to say bye, you know, because he was pulling out of the driveway as I was going back in, and that was the last time I seen him.
David met up with Robin again. A couple days later, his truck was found abandoned, and 2 days after that, their bodies were found at Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge in Isle of Wight. Both had been shot to death.
It was horrendous. It was the worst day of my life, for sure.
The night David and Robin were here at Ragged Island, it was raining heavily, so there's concern any evidence at the crime scenes would have been washed away.
So Mike has pretty much given up hope any evidence or the investigation will ever lead to an arrest. The FBI and Virginia State Police are working this case, the killing of a couple the year before and 2 other double homicides in the next 2 years together, as the Colonial Parkway Murders. But Mike says communication with authorities dropped off as the years went on. Still, he hopes state police, the lead agency in his brother's case, will not give up.
So you gotta master the playbook, you gotta work.
In the meantime, in the absence of answers, he finds solace in his garage and his memories.
That 10 minutes we spent on the driveway has comforted me for the last 30 years.
State police tell me there is currently no physical evidence linking the 4 double homicides collectively known as the Colonial Parkway Murders. But because there are similarities, VSP and the FBI continue to coordinate and communicate, working together on possible leads and eliminating suspects. Laura Geller, 13 News Now.
And new at 6, a new resource through Virginia State Police could help investigators crack a long list of cold cases.
Some of them have remained unsolved for decades. Philip Townsend takes us back to 1987 for a case that's featured on the new Cold Case website.
September 23rd, 1987, a beachcomber here at Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge in Isle of Wight making a gruesome discovery. The bodies of a 14-year-old girl and a 20-year-old man shot to death. Investigators had very few leads.
In the sheriff's own words, it's getting to the point where he's grasping at straws. There just aren't that
The families of Margaret Edwards and David Lee Knobling would never get justice. The case has remained cold for more than 30 years.
Start putting these stories back out there. Start talking about these cases again. Maybe someone somewhere knows something.
Virginia Delegate Danica Rome has pushed for resources to thaw out cases just like the Isle of Wight murders in '87. And 2 years after getting a bill passed in the General Assembly, a brand new online database is getting the public involved.
Your viewers right now have a chance to actually see some of these cases and tell law enforcement, hey, I think I know something about this.
Coldcase.vsp.virginia.gov brings you to the Virginia Cold Case Database. Here, you can look up the unidentified, the missing, and the unsolved. Not only that, you can submit a tip directly from that specific case and see the agent who's on it. This will help investigators pursue new leads, helping families finally find closure.
Even if we solve one unsolved homicide, that $100,000 investment of taxpayer dollars will be money well spent at that point.
For 13 News Now, I'm Philip Townsend.
The FBI wants to hear from anyone who may have known a suspect in one of the infamous Colonial Parkway murders.
So Alan Wilmer Sr. is accused of killing 2 people in Isle of Wight County and another person in Hampton more than 3 decades ago. That double murder, part of the Colonial Parkway murders. And while 3 families now have closure, Wilmer Sr. will never serve time for their deaths because he died several years ago. Sarah Hammond tells us more about who he was and what the FBI still wants to know.
Authorities say they've identified the man they believe is responsible for killing 3 people in the 1980s. One of them a double murder that was part of the Colonial Parkway murders. They say the now deceased Alan Wilmer Sr. is the man responsible. Who was Alan Wilmer Sr.? The man now accused of killing David Knobling and Robin Edwards in 1987 and Teresa Howell 2 years later died in 2017. According to authorities, he was an avid hunter, a fisherman, and a business owner. Now the FBI says they want to know more.
Our agencies are still working to reconstruct the movements and encounters of Alan Williams Sr.
Virginia State Police say Wilmer was a 5'5" muscular man who went by the nickname Pokey. He owned a business called Better Tree Service. Now take a look at these pictures. He drove a distinctive blue 1966 Dodge Fargo pickup truck with the Virginia license plate EM Raw. He also had a wooden commercial fishing boat named the Denny Wade. Virginia State Police also say Wilmer had no felonies on his criminal record.
So his DNA had never been obtained until it was necessary for identification purposes following his death.
In a statement, Wilmer's family said the crimes come, quote, as a complete and horrific shock to them, adding they learned about this news about the same time as everyone else. Now the FBI is asking anyone who might have encountered Wilmer while hunting, fishing, at a bar, or anywhere else to let them know.
A piece of information, no matter how small, could be useful to investigators.
We recognize there are still other families related to the Colonial Parkway homicide victims who are still hoping for answers. That's why we continue to push forward with our investigations.
Sarah Hammond, 13 News Now.
The victims' families are reacting to investigators naming Alan Wilmer Sr. As the suspect. In a statement, the Knobling and Edwards family said, quote, "We have a sense of relief and justice knowing that he can no longer victimize another." And Howell's family says in a statement they're grateful for the closure this brings, but that, quote, "Nothing will bring Terry back. The void left by her absence over the years is inexpressible." Wilmer's identification as a suspect in Howell's death comes nearly 30 years after a first arrest in this case. Clinton Wayne Edwards was charged with Howell's murder back in 1995. It was a big break at the time. That arrest coming 6 years after Howell was found strangled in the woods off Butler Farm Road in Hampton. Edwards was charged with rape and murder at the time, but police say those charges were no prost when DNA evidence cleared him. And now, 29 years later, it's DNA evidence that connects another man, Wilmer, to Howell's death.
The murders of Knobling and Edwards in Isle of Wight County, just one of 4 separate double homicides, commonly called the Colonial Parkway Murders. Now, some are wondering if Alan Wilmer Sr. is linked to the other cold cases. Let's verify. Between 1986 and 1989, 8 people were found dead on or near the Colonial Parkway. In each incident, a young couple was killed, and the victims were either found dead inside a car or the car was abandoned, just like in the murders of Knobling and Edwards. But despite the similarities, Virginia State Police are not tying Wilmer Sr. to the other cold cases at this time.
Although the similarities in these series of double homicides that spanned a 3-year period cannot be ignored, at this time, there is no forensic nor physical evidence to link the Isle of Wight County homicides to those other double murders.
So we can verify that, no, at this time, Alan Wilmer Sr. is not connected to the other 3 double homicides, collectively known as the Colonial Parkway Murders. Now, I spoke with the families of the other murder victims who told me they're hoping people come forward with information that could help solve these cases.
It's very difficult to wait 37 years for answers.
Bill Thomas still has a lot of questions about what happened to his sister, Kathy Thomas. Kathy is one victim in a series of killings known as the Colonial Parkway Murders, and police say Alan Wilmer is responsible for at least one of the double homicides.
But as the brother of a murder victim, I can't help but take some real joy in seeing families get answers.
While police have not directly connected Wilmer to Kathy's death, her brother is hoping more information will be brought to light to help solve the other cold cases, now that police identified a suspect in at least one of the Colonial Parkway murders.
Somebody here in Virginia has to know more about the history of this gentleman.
The mother of another victim is also hoping people who knew Wilmer will come forward with information. Joanne Haley's daughter, Cassandra Haley, disappeared in 1988.
The only thing that this thing can do, bringing it out, is shake the wool out of the trees. Because there's some people who know what happened, and they're just too afraid to come forward.
Both Haley and Thomas are asking anyone who may have information about Wilmer and his whereabouts in the 1980s to come forward.
Need people to think long and hard about, have they ever crossed paths with this man?
The family of another Colonial Parkway murder victim is also speaking out. Keith Call disappeared alongside Cassandra Haley back in 1988. Keith's sister, Joyce Call, said she's asking anyone with information about Alan Wilmer to contact the police. She said, quote, "Our family is hopeful that our case will have closure very soon."
The Virginia law may prevent police from easily verifying whether a serial killer could be linked to even more crimes. Before Alan Wilmer Sr. died in 2017, police say he killed at least 3 people in the 1980s, including a young woman in Hampton and 2 of the Colonial Parkway murder victims. Authorities are now asking whether Wilmer took even more secrets to the grave. There could be an easy way to find out, but it's not being done. Tonight, 13 News Now Investigates asks why.
Tonight, authorities are asking whether Alan Wilmer Sr. could be responsible for more than 3 murders.
And we believe he will be linked to a number of other unsolved homicides in Virginia.
Bill Thomas's sister Kathy was one of the first victims in the Colonial Parkway murders. Thomas wonders if Wilmer also killed his sister, and he thinks DNA could be the missing link.
His profile needs to be uploaded to CODIS, and we're very concerned that it has not yet been uploaded to CODIS.
CODIS is a government-run DNA database that links criminals to DNA collected at crime scenes. Virginia State Police say they can't upload Wilmer's DNA into CODIS because he was not and never will be convicted. But in Virginia, people charged with murder get their DNA taken well before conviction at the time of their arrest.
For this crime, had he been arrested in Virginia, they would swab his cheek for that, yes.
Ashley Spence, the founder of DNA Justice Project, says there's just one glaring problem for state police. Wilmer died in 2017 with a clean record. He has neither a conviction nor a violent arrest, so his DNA profile will stay out of CODIS, possibly keeping other unsolved crimes from easily being linked to him.
CODIS is a very, very good system. It's very regulated, which I think is a good thing, but then you come into circumstances like this where you can see an opportunity, for improvement.
We checked with more than 20 different sources for this story and found some police departments aren't waiting around for CODIS. In Hampton, police are reviewing all sexual assault cases that match Wilmer's MO. In Suffolk, police recently checked Wilmer's DNA to see if he was a match for one of their unsolved cold cases. And in Virginia Beach, the cold case unit just reviewed dozens of unsolved murders from the 70s and 80s to see if Wilmer was a match, including the 1983 double murder of 2 women whose bodies were found in the Chesapeake Bay. At the time, a detective thought they may be looking for a local boater who knew the waterways well. But after taking another look at the case last week, investigators say Wilmer is not a suspect for now. Other police departments told us they are taking a wait-and-see approach and will take action if and when any of their cold cases get a hit in CODIS.
DNA is science, it's truth, it's accurate.
DNA is what ultimately linked Wilmer to 3 cold case murders. Now, as police work to build a timeline on Wilmer's life, it could be old-fashioned police work that links him to any more.
And here's one more thing I learned with this investigation. CODIS is capable of something called a case-to-case hit, meaning that 3 recently solved murders could hit on other unsolved cases if the suspect DNA is the same. I've posted a much more in-depth story on 13newsnow.com to answer more questions that you might have about this case, including why Virginia State Police say the 3 recently solved murder cases are not yet considered closed.
A known serial killer is linked to his fourth victim. Virginia State Police say Alan Wilmer sexually assaulted and murdered 18-year-old Lori Ann Powell.
It's a cold case that has baffled investigators for more than 30 years, and it's now solved because of DNA evidence.
Emily Harrison joins us in the studio now. And Emily, police say Wilmer is also behind what's known as the infamous Colonial Parkway murders.
Yes, indeed. They are also known as the Lovers Lane murders. As investigators say, Wilmer targeted extremely isolated strips of Colonial Parkway for his victims. Now the number of known victims rises to 4, including 20-year-old David Knobling, 14-year-old Robin Edwards, 29-year-old Teresa Lynn Howell, and now 18-year-old Lori Ann Powell. Powell's family today says while they may never get justice, they now at least have an answer. Lori Ann Powell's family sat in tears as they have waited for this day for more than 30 years, remembering Lori Ann as a vivacious young woman.
We are profoundly grateful to the dedicated law enforcement professionals who never gave up on finding justice for Lori Ann.
Lori Ann disappeared in 1988 after police say she got into an argument with her boyfriend and walked away on Route 614 in Gloucester County. Weeks later, investigators found her body on Craney Island, where she had been stabbed multiple times and sexually assaulted. Investigators used that DNA evidence decades later to connect her death to Alan Wilmer.
He traveled the community quite a bit in various vehicles. It's looking at the proximity of some of these cases.
Investigators say Wilmer used his commercial fishing boat to transport victims to various crime scenes. Detectives found Edwards and Knobling's bodies just 10 miles from Lori Ann Powell's. When I asked why Wilmer is not included in the national DNA database, as Wilmer is suspected in many more cases, VSP says their hands are tied.
It's prohibited from being entered into CODIS. In order for it to be entered in CODIS, you have to be convicted or arrested of certain felony offenses, and Wilmer was not.
Wilmer died without any felony convictions in 2017. Since his DNA cannot be nationally searched, investigators are asking anyone who knew him to come forward.
Any information could be the one tip that's needed to connect him to another case.
Again, Wilmer is suspected of at least 7 more deaths associated with the Colonial Parkway murders. VSP says Wilmer's family has helped investigators. Emily Harrison, 13 News Now.
All right, Emily, thank you. And in a statement, Powell's family says while nothing can erase the pain of losing Lori Ann, today we find comfort in knowing that the truth has come to light and that accountability has finally been achieved.
Well, tonight, the sister of murder victim Lori Ann Powell shares her journey of grief and forgiveness over the past 37 years.
So this comes after Virginia State Police linked Powell's death to the Colonial Parkway killer, Alan Wilmer, over 3 weeks ago. Layla Cox joins us in the studio with this exclusive interview. Layla, what did you find out?
That's right, Dana and Connor. Mrs. Cindy Kirshner, older sister to Lori Ann by just 21 and a half months, says she never lost hope that one day answers would come. And now she is at peace.
I was a day, she was a night. I was a yin, she was a yang.
In March of 1988, Lori Ann Powell disappeared after police say she got into an argument with her boyfriend and walked away on Route 614 in Gloucester County. Weeks later, investigators found the 18-year-old's body on Craney Island, where she had been stabbed multiple times and sexually assaulted.
When it first happened, I had survivor guilt.
Kirshner says she carried survivor's guilt with her for a long time, wondering what more she could have done to protect her baby sister. Over time, she hoped answers would come soon.
Eventually, over time, I forgave myself.
And one day, 37 years later, a detective reached out to Kirshner with what she calls answered prayers.
He said, well, I want to let you know that her boyfriend did not do this and that we do know who did it.
Decades later, investigators used DNA evidence to connect Powell's death to Alan Wilmer. Although investigators have linked Wilmer to the infamous Colonial Parkway murders, he died without any felony convictions in 2017.
I'm at peace with it. I've even forgiven the individual.
According to Virginia State Police, Wilmer's DNA could not be entered into CODIS database because he was not convicted or arrested. Kirshner says there could be more families that also deserve answers.
I feel like they need to do something about that. I feel like maybe cases could be solved sooner.
And has this message to share to those still grieving.
Even though there are times when you feel like no one cares or you don't think they're working on trying to solve it, we are a testament that they are.
Kirshner says although Lori-Ann is no longer on this earth, she feels her spirit alongside her every single day. Her focus now is her family. Layla Cox, 13 News Now.